And we are back. Welcome back to the Premier League prediction series. This time for game week 9 after a very, very good week for the English clubs in Europe, apart from one, that being Manchester United. Check out my reaction to last night's disappointing draw with Fenerbahce at the top of your screen right now. But we're not here to talk about Europe. We're here to talk about the Premier League once again in what could prove to be another incredibly pivotal week and all areas of the table. So before we get into it, if you haven't done so already, please do consider dropping a like on this video if you enjoy all of my prediction series, and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. We've had an incredible influx of subscribers again over the last week, so thank you all for your amazing support on the European series. But let's get into it now. Let's skip ahead to the prediction screen where you will see off the back of last week, we are now on 44 out of 80 Premier League predictions correct with 8 correct scores. And after a pretty decent week in predictions on the European front, we are now at 233 out of 407 on the overall season scores, with our total scores now going up to 21 after getting 3 correct scores last night in the Europa League and Europa Conference League. So that is where things stand. Don't forget, before we get into this now, that you can have your say on all 10 of these matches over on the community page where you can vote on how you think each of these games are going to go. And like I say, don't forget to comment down below as well with all of your thoughts. And without any further ado, let's get straight into it. The first game of the weekend actually starts tonight. So if you're a fantasy football player, get your teams done today, because Leicester against Nottingham Forest is the opening game of the weekend, and it is taking place tonight in the Premier League. So let's start with that one then. Leicester and Forest, where Leicester have won all of their last 2 matches. The question surrounding them is, should Fataru be starting? He's been the main impact for them off the bench in the last couple of games, but should he be starting? That is the big question. For Forest, they are still going to be missing Morgan Gibbs-White for this one, it seems. However, they didn't need him to get victory over Crystal Palace in their last outing, but they did need their goalkeeper, Matt Sells, to be on absolute tip-top form. For me, looking at this one, I think it's a really, really tough one to call. I think all 3 results are available for you here, but I am going to go for the one in the middle, and that is a 1-1 draw to kick off the weekend's action. A 1-1 draw tonight between Leicester and Nottingham Forest. That then takes us on to Saturday, where the opening fixture of the weekend there is Aston Villa taking on Bournemouth. Villa, who have made a very good run of form recently. They got the victory 3-1 away at Fulham last time out, but they did see Philogene sent off for a yellow card and then a very, very soft second yellow card. He wouldn't have started anyway, but he is, of course, now suspended. And speaking of red cards, it was Bournemouth who benefited from a red card against Arsenal last weekend, picking up the 2-0 victory and putting a major dent in Arsenal's title hopes early on. Villa, of course, backed up their victory against Fulham by getting a lovely 2-0 win over Bologna, with a massive thanks going to John Duran for another brilliant striker's goal. Is he going to start making a push for a start in the Premier League over Ollie Watkins, or maybe even with Ollie Watkins? We'll find out in this one. In the match last year, it was a 3-1 victory to Aston Villa, and that is exactly what I'm going to go for again, a 3-1 victory to Aston Villa here, although it is worth noting that Bournemouth have not scored in their last 2 away fixtures. Next up, it is Brentford taking on Ipswich Town. Brentford will be looking to bounce back from a disappointing defeat to Manchester United at Old Trafford last time out, whereas Ipswich are still looking for their first win of the season. After 8 games, it is 4 draws and 4 defeats for Ipswich, going down quite comfortably in the end to Everton last week. For Bournemouth, they've got no real fresh injury concerns. Visser came back for them at Old Trafford, and Ipswich have still got no fresh injury concerns, but both sides are still missing what you consider about 4 or 5 first-team options, albeit not necessarily starters, apart from probably Twanzebe for Ipswich. For me, this is only really going one way. I've seen a lot of good stuff from Bournemouth recently, scoring 5 against Wolves a couple of weeks ago as well. I'm going to go for 4-1. I still think Ipswich will get themselves a goal, but I think the way Brentford are playing at the moment, they should be blowing away a side like Ipswich, who haven't really turned up to the party yet in the Premier League. Next up, it is Brighton taking on Wolves. Brighton, who, thanks to Bart Verbruggen's incredible performance at St James's Park, came away with a 1-0 victory. Wolves, on the other hand, were on the receiving end of that incredibly controversial moment between Bernardo Silva and Jose Sarr, with John Stones picking up that late winner for Manchester City, which unfortunately for Wolves leaves them still rock bottom of the Premier League table. In terms of the injuries and suspensions going into this one, the biggest concerns are for Brighton, who could now not only be without João Pedro, but Danny Welbeck looks like he's going to be doubtful for this one. We'll have to wait for the press conferences today to see if he's going to be available. But even if he's not, they've still got Jorginho Rutter, who can make the step up from attacking midfield to striker if needed. And we know with Brighton, they've got cover in all positions anyway. And Evan Ferguson can obviously play up there as well. For me, even though Wolves have started to look better on the pitch, the results still aren't coming for them. They're bottom of the table. Brighton are fifth. Realistically, with the game at the Amex, there's only going to be one result this season, and it's going to be a 2-0 victory for Brighton, in my opinion. Speaking of the controversy of the weekend, we now move to Manchester City, who are taking on Southampton off the back of that late winner from John Stones, whereas Southampton sit in 19th in the Premier League table on goal difference ahead of Wolves after throwing away that 2-0 lead over Leicester last time out. Ryan Fraser is suspended for this one after getting that red card for pulling back Jamie Vardy, which resulted in the penalty that made it 2-2 and then left them with 10 men to try and survive, which they obviously failed to do. For Manchester City, okay, they weren't great the last few weeks. They managed to scrape the result against Wolves, but a 5-0 victory over Sparta Prague in the Champions League. Now going into a game against Southampton, who have been conceding goals left, right and centre. And if we're being honest, they've not had their game where they've conceded 9 goals yet this season, which seems to happen every single season in the Premier League for Southampton over the recent years. They always have one game where they concede 9. Could it be here? Who knows? I'm not going all the way to 9, but unfortunately for Southampton, I'm going all the way to 6. I think this is going to be another hammering for them. I could still see them potentially nicking a goal, but if City play the way they played on Wednesday night, it's not looking good for Southampton. Final game on Saturday then sees Everton taking on Fulham in what I think is going to be a really interesting one. Everton are unbeaten in their last 5 matches. I say unbeaten because one of those games was a defeat on penalties. So in normal time and even in extra time, Everton are unbeaten in their last 5. Fulham obviously beaten by Aston Villa last weekend due to that, I think, quite controversial red card for Joachim Andersen. I think Ollie Watkins pretty much threw himself to the floor. Obviously, the ref's got no choice once he's given the foul to send Andersen off, but I thought it was a very harsh decision to have that even given as a foul in the first place. But like I say, once it's given, it's going to be a red card. And he's been a massive impact for Fulham since he's gone back there. I think he's been one of the major reasons they've been performing so well. It's one of the main reasons they've been defending so well. And I think with how well Everton have been attacking over the last few weeks, I think they can certainly exploit the weakness of not having Andersen in that back line. The only issue for Everton is that these sides met 3 times last season, twice in the league, once in the cup. And Everton did not win a single one of them, including both times at Goodison in the league and then being beaten on penalties in the cup by Fulham last season at Goodison Park. So, little bit of momentum on Fulham's side in terms of the head-to-head. But I think what I've seen from Everton and Fulham over the last couple of weeks, and with that little extra bit of the suspension to Andersen, I'm going to give it as 2-1 to Everton. But genuinely believe all 3 results available in this one. On to Sunday then, we've got 3 games kicking off at 2 on Sunday. The first of those is Chelsea taking on Newcastle. Chelsea back to winning ways over Panathinaikos last night, changing their entire team, but still playing absolutely brilliantly. And you have to give credit to Enzo Maresca for having that much talent in his squad and being able to freely rotate them without, so far, it looking like there's been too many concerns from any of the players. So fair play to them for that. They're playing some good stuff. I think they played pretty well at Anfield last week and were arguably unlucky to lose at Anfield last week. Newcastle, on the other hand, have not been playing great so far this season, but then getting results. But I'm well informed by one of my best mates who is a Newcastle fan that the performance against Brighton was the best he's seen from Newcastle this season. But as we've already mentioned, Verbruggen stopped Newcastle from getting a single goal. So where does that sort of leave Newcastle coming into this game against Chelsea? They've played bad but got results, then played well and not got results, whereas Chelsea look like a very, very strong side at the moment and at Stamford Bridge are playing some great stuff. Albeit, they did draw with Nottingham Forest at home last time out in the Premier League. I'm going to go for a Chelsea win. I can see this being a high-scoring game. Both sides do tend to leak goals this season. I'm going to go for 3-2 to Chelsea. I almost went for 3-1, but I do still fancy Newcastle's chances in this one if they can get it right. My expectation is a Chelsea win, though, which is why I've gone for 3-2. That then brings us to Crystal Palace and Tottenham. Crystal Palace, the lowest scorers in the Premier League so far this season. After 8 games, they've only scored 5 goals. Failed to score again against Nottingham Forest last time out. Although, again, a very good performance from Matt Sells in that one in the Forest net. For Tottenham, they are the second top scorers in the division. So you've got the worst scorers against the second top scorers. They, again, changed a lot of their players last night for their game against AZ Alkmaar. They deliberately rested Heung-min Son, who's still working his way back from injury, and put in a great performance last week against West Ham. The likelihood is, although a lot of people are saying he's potentially doubtful, I think the likelihood is that Heung-min Son will be back and starting for Spurs. For Palace, they've just really got to get it sorted, but I don't see it happening in this one. Palace, like I say, they're without a win all season. They're in the relegation zone. It's just not looking great for them right now, and I think the only realistic result I can go for is a 2-0 win to Spurs. Maybe Palace get it sorted in this one, but the way Spurs have been playing recently, I just don't think it's going to happen. So I'm going for a 2-0 victory to Tottenham. And speaking of Tottenham, they were, of course, the victors over West Ham United. Last time out, Mohamed Kudus decided to take on the entire Spurs team. First with his feet, to not much success, but he did score a tap-in at the back post. But then he decided to take on the entire team with his fists and got himself sent off and suspended going into this one. And then it ended up being a 4-1 victory to Spurs, or a 4-1 defeat for West Ham. For Manchester United, a great performance against Brentford, which resulted in a 2-1 victory. Then a poor performance once again last night against Fenerbahce after what I thought was a good start. Again, more on that in my post-match reaction that's already available for you. I look at this game now and I definitely think Manchester United can go and get the win here. As a Manchester United fan, of course I think that. But I have to be realistic. I have to look at the performance again last night and go, well, if we play like that, we won't beat West Ham. But then West Ham have also been underperforming over the recent weeks as well. In terms of the head-to-head record going into this one, all of the last 6 matches, I believe it is, have resulted in wins for the home side in the Premier League. So there's a lot going in West Ham's favour in this one. Obviously, United still have a lot of injury concerns. Anthony's been added to that injury list as well. I'm still going to go for a 1-1 draw, though. I think United are definitely capable of getting something out of this game. If they don't turn up and West Ham do, West Ham win this one easy. But I have to believe that the performances over the last couple of weeks have been getting better. And if we can play well again, we'll get at least a draw. So my third prediction running, I'm going for a 1-1 draw for Manchester United. And then finally, it's time for the main event. 4:30 kickoff, Arsenal against Liverpool. Third take on first, although if all the predictions go as I've already predicted on the screen here, it will actually be second against sixth by the time that this game is played, because a lot of clubs can jump Arsenal and City can jump Liverpool. Obviously, the big question surrounding this game is what's the state of Arsenal's team going to look like? We know that Saliba's suspended. We know that Ødegaard's not going to be back for it, but big question marks over the likes of Bukayo Saka, Calafiori, Ben White, Jurrien Timber, and all I can say right now is we're going to have to wait for Mikel Arteta's press conference. But even if he says all of them are going to play, we all know they're not going to be at 100%. For Liverpool, we know Alisson's going to be out. We know that Jota is doubtful because when he yanked Tosin on him and then claimed it was a red card, he also cracked one of his ribs or something. For me, that was never even a foul by Tosin. Jota literally grabbed his shorts and pulled him on top of him. And serves him right that he hurt himself in the process of doing it. But that's the only real concern for Liverpool. Obviously, Arsenal losing last week. They've lost ground in the title race already. Liverpool are top of the table. 11 wins out of 12 for Arne Slot in all competitions. In the last 3 seasons, there's been 6 matches between these two sides. And Liverpool have won 4 out of those 6 at the Emirates. So just put that into perspective. In the last 3 years, there's been 6 matches at the Emirates and Liverpool have won 4 of them. So they don't have a good record against Liverpool. If you're an Arsenal fan, it's the worst time to be playing Liverpool, the form they're in. If you're a Liverpool fan, it's the best time to be playing Arsenal with the form they're in and the injuries and suspensions they've picked up. Realistically, I have to go for 2-1 to Liverpool. I definitely do believe, again, all three results are possible here. Arsenal have been producing big results in the last few seasons in big matches. But, like I say, I just think it's the absolute wrong time for this fixture for Arsenal. So I'm going for a 2-1 victory to Liverpool. To round off Game Week 9, as always, let me know all your thoughts down in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. As always, I'll be back with my post-match reaction to West Ham against Manchester United on Sunday. So I'll see you there.